1, 2, 3, 4, and 8.
Correct.
Okay, well, it is 7 o'clock. And I'm going to call the meeting of the Middleton Plan Commission for March 8, 2022 to order. And maybe the first one is the roll call.
Bruce,
Here?
Erdman Hermans,
Here.
Is it muted?
Paulson,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Slavish.
Here.
Has Ramsey joined us? All right, marking Ramsey for now as absent, but I will keep an eye out for him.
Okay.
Is he in L&O right now?
He
Yeah.
is, and they've got the chicken ordinance on the agenda, so we don't expect him anytime soon.
I could say something foul, but I won't.
Chickens are running wild, Kurt. So, okay, we had 7 o'clock, and the first item is here, the public hearing. And the first one is a public hearing for rezoning from R2 to Planned Development District, General Implementation Plan to allow for construction of 4 buildings, duplexes and laundry and efficiency. This is 7107 to 7109 University Avenue. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. And Abby, do you want to say, we got some communications already? Do you want to mention those?
Yes.
Or? Mhm.
Sure. Yep. I have received 5 public comments that have been entered into the record, and they are included in your packet. Those were from Landgraf, Westbury, Hagan, Evans, and Lindley. I know that at least one of those individuals is here and would like to speak this evening. Mr. Westbury has his hand raised. I will keep time. Each
Okay.
person will have 3 minutes available to speak.
Okay, John, go ahead and you got, identify yourself for your 3 minutes.
Okay, so I should be unmuted now.
Yes,
I have a short printed statement I would like to read. My wife says if I stick to the statement, I won't lapse into stupid. Takes me 2 minutes and 41 seconds to read, so I'll take it now. My name is John Westbury. My wife Sue and I live at 7104 Elmwood Avenue. Our property shares a rear lot line with the 7107 University Avenue parcel. We have 35 years experience with that parcel and a strong interest in how it might be used. I'm speaking to oppose the request to rezone the 7107 University Avenue parcel from R2 to PDD. The zoning change request and its underlying development proposal rest on a simple narrative that the University Avenue parcel is underdeveloped, underpopulated by people and housing. From one concrete and quantitative point of view, this narrative is false. The University Avenue parcel is currently home to 11 discrete housing units, each with its own electric meter and mailbox, a single family dwelling, and then 10 tiny one-room apartments in a 75-year-old motel building. If we take the ratio of 11 housing units to parcel area, and the parcel area is 0.638 acres, housing density for 7107 University Avenue is 17.25 units per acre. Average density for the other 38 parcels in the long block that contains 7107 University Avenue, and that's the block from Park to University to Bristol to Elmwood, have an average density, housing unit density of only 6.8 units per acre. In short, and contrary to the development narrative, the 7107 University Avenue parcel is hardly underdeveloped. Rather, that property is already the most densely developed parcel in the entire immediate neighborhood by a very significant margin, 2.5 times greater than average. The developer's plan is to add 6 new housing units in the form of 3 duplexes. That will increase housing density in the parcel to more than 26 units per acre, more than 4 times or almost 4 times greater than the neighborhood average, sharply out of character with the surrounding properties. Dense infill raises valid, long-lasting concerns about congestion, public safety and decorum, loss of green space, erosion of neighborhood character, concerns that do not weigh less and do not disappear in the face of putative proposal benefits related to housing needs for both the city and the county. I urge those who make the final decision to deny the zoning change request, effectively putting the ball back in the property owner's court, to think again, to think better, to plan differently for the parcel in question, to acknowledge potential downsides, to develop, if at all, in ways that respect all concerned interests and provide an improved match to the character of the surrounding neighborhood. Surely in the good neighbor city, defining and preserving neighborhood character ought to count for much, much more than mere lip service. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I also want to say thank you for writing that detailed email. And I read whole of it. And, you know, as a professor, as a former professor, you did an awesome job. So really appreciate that. Excellent. And I was also in your neighborhood just about little over about an hour ago. So I walked around there and talked to one gentleman who lives right across from you. And you know, anyway, I got a little bit, I have been there before, but I decided I got to go there again before this meeting, and I did. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak at this time? Is there anyone else who may want to speak at this time on this particular public hearing? Okay, I don't see any takers. So as Abby said, we have heard from some other residents as well, and they're part of the record. And all that information was forwarded to all the commissioners on Plan Commission. Thank you. So I'm going to close this part of the public hearing, and we go to the next item on the agenda. That is 7:05. What time is it now? So
It's
oh, yeah,
7:07.
7:07. So okay, that's good. So I'm going to go to the next public hearing. This is the general implementation plan amendment for rezoning to allow for renter occupied townhomes in addition to owner occupied. This is Conservancy Band 2411, 2413, 2415, 2417, and 2419 Parliamentary Street. Does Abby, you want to say anything for the hearing?
This is a request from the developer to modify the general implementation plan that was prepared for this property that specified that these units would be owner occupied housing units. I did mention in my staff comments that typically whether a property is renter occupied or owner occupied, it really does not generally factor into zoning because it doesn't really affect the overall use of the property. It doesn't affect, you know, the building type, the massing, setbacks, traffic. In this case, the developer voluntarily agreed and wrote into the GIP document that these would be owner occupied units. And so the reason that we recommended that this be a GIP amendment is because it was clearly stated within the GIP document, and this would be a change. And so that is why there is a hearing. We have not received any public comments. We did have a voicemail, but it was someone who left only a first name, no callback number, and no address. And so after conferring with staff, it is not a public comment that's part of the public record.
Okay, thank you, Abby. Is there anyone who may want to speak either for or against this? Is there anyone who may want to speak at this time? This is the public hearing for the general implementation plan amendment for rezoning to allow for renter occupied townhomes in addition to owner occupied Conservancy Band 2411, 2413, 2415, 2417, and 2419 Parliamentary Street. Okay, there are no takers, so I'm going to close this part of the public hearing. We are going to go to the approval of the minutes. Need a motion to approve.
Schaefer moves.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Schaefer. I need a second.
Lavish will second.
And second by Commissioner Slavish. Any questions, comments, changes, corrections? Okay, I don't hear or any raised hands. Okay, all those in favor of the approval of the minutes, Plan Commission minutes of 2/22/22, how about that? Say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. We are on to the agenda items. Another easy one, set a public hearing date for general implementation plan, Madison Development Corporation Apartments, 6904 to 6908 Century Avenue. Abby, do you want to say anything for,
This is a proposal for a 3-story workforce housing development on properties just west of Pick and Save on Century Avenue. The property owner has met with the neighborhood, and that has gone really well so far. There have been really good open lines of communication between the developer and the neighborhood, and this is also the project that is selected to be the recipient for the city's Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery funds that we were able to secure. So that's a $3 million grant to assist with this project.
and by the way, Abby and her staff did a great job to work hard under very limited time, and we still made it. Awesome. Okay, need a motion to set a public hearing.
This is Paulson. I'll make the motion to set a public hearing for April 12th at 7 PM.
Okay, need a second. Okay, I will go ahead and second it. Motion by Commissioner Paulson, I second it. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to set a public hearing date for general implementation plan for Madison Development Corporation Apartment 6904 to 6908 Century Avenue for April 12th at 7 PM, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Well, motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 2. This is the rezoning from R2 to Planned Development District. General implementation plan to allow for construction of 4 buildings, duplexes and laundry efficiency at 7107 to 7109 University Avenue, LLC. So Abby, you want to start, or it's the developer is planning to make a presentation?
I don't know if they were planning to make a presentation or not. I do see the representatives on the line. Roger, was your team planning to present tonight or just answer questions?
I was just thinking we would answer questions. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so anything else
Yep.
you want to add, Abby, right now?
No, I don't have anything to add. Commissioner Paulson has his hand raised.
No,
Okay.
just the first question is, has this proposal changed at all since we saw the concept? Since we looked at that pretty extensively, what was it, a couple weeks ago? Or is this the same proposal? Roger?
This is the same proposal. There was some minor changes made per staff comments, but those all regarded infrastructure, sewer, water, etc.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mike Slavish.
Yeah, Roger, I had a question. First of all, I generally support, as we talked about the last meeting, the townhomes along University. I did, out of fairness to some of the comments raised by the residents behind, if the existing building is to remain, can you, and I noticed in the package, there were no floor plans for that. Just curious as to what do those rooms look like? They are tiny. And, I work in affordable housing, so I get it. Typically affordable housing units, as you would define those, would have some kind of kitchen facilities. In 200 and some odd square feet. Are these just former hotel rooms, or are there actually kitchen facilities in each of these units?
There are kitchen facilities in each of these units. You walk in the front door, directly in front of you is, after it's roughly 18 feet in depth. So approximately 11 feet in front of you is another doorway that enters you into the bathroom that has a vanity sink, a toilet, and a shower or tub, depending on the different units. And then the space that is immediately to the right of that bathroom is a kitchenette with a cabinet against the back wall, followed by a refrigerator, which is not an under cabinet. It's a smaller refrigerator, but it's full
Right.
upright refrigerator, followed by a cabinet with a kitchen sink, and then another cabinet for storage, and an stove oven unit. And there are also cabinets above that kitchen sink, stove oven run. So you're walking into a small bedroom with some shelves and storage and such, and then a full bathroom and a functional kitchenette.
And that's included in each of the units, Roger, is that right?
Yes, that's included in each of the units.
Yeah, just future reference, I think it'd be helpful to show a sample floor plan, given that we're trying to make a decision on the entire site. So, but thanks for the clarification.
Yep, you're welcome. In regards to that earlier question, I believe that the sidewalk in front of the existing building got a foot smaller. And so that parking lot changed approximately 2 feet in the dimension there in hindsight. So I think the dimension from the back of the townhomes to the face or the curb of the parking lot, so to speak, became larger because those parking stalls went from 16 feet to 18 feet.
Commissioner Slavish, you have more questions? That's
No, Mayor, that was it.
Okay.
Thanks.
okay. Commissioner Paulson.
Yeah, a couple of, I guess, procedural questions before the substantive questions. And I apologize if we went over this last time or if I didn't ask last time. As I get older, my memory fades. Either Roger or Abby, can you tell us when this parcel stopped being a hotel and converted to multifamily residential? And I know in your staff comments, you said the hotel was built in 1945. So that would have preceded our zoning. But do you know when it changed?
I don't.
I do not either. I have heard stories around town that, so I believe when it was still Fish Building Supply, that there were some managers that would travel into town and possibly rent a unit there for a few days. So that would have been 10 years ago. But I honestly have that's just conjecture.
Well, it raises this question, which we keep coming up against, which we have no answer for, which is at some point in time, the structure is a non-conforming structure according to zoning. But if the use changed from a hotel to an apartment building, at some point in time, that use change would have to comply with zoning, but we don't have any data in the files either way. And a lot of uses changed in the 80s and 90s without a zoning permit. So the staff report indicates that the use is grandfathered, and that's the operating principle we're still deciding on. Is that correct, Abby?
I would say that's correct. I do know that based on a coworker who has worked for the city for 25 years, when they moved here, those were apartments. So they have been apartments. I mean, this is not like hard data that we have available in the
Right.
file, but they've been in apartments as far as we know for a minimum of 25 years.
Okay. Yeah, then
That
clearly
is that is definitely accurate.
Oh, okay. Oh, Dan Ramsey's here.
They've been apartments for probably 30 years or better.
Okay. And I guess the reason I raised that is a lot of the comments from neighbors were suggesting that they needed to discontinue this use or they should eliminate the apartments. And that's not really before us at all today. If they did nothing, those uses could continue. So the only other question I had is for Daphne. The recently prepared draft of the corridor plan. I confess you emailed it out and I have not read it yet. Can you describe a little bit about how this segment, particularly that's currently single family residential all around, is envisioned in at least the draft plan?
Yeah, so the draft University Avenue corridor plan, it actually doesn't really focus at anything kind of west of Park Street. I think the overall image is that it would just remain sort of residential. So the brunt of the focus of the design guidelines and all of that is focused towards east of Park Street. So I think they just have like a very general statement of, west of Park Street, everything will remain residential.
And are the design guidelines mostly like building placement and commercial facades or in orientation, or are they also like architectural style? And I don't think these townhouses that he's proposing would be in conflict with that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's mostly just they talk about setbacks and where parking would be. We want parking mostly behind the building, stuff like that. Nothing really, or they also talk about facade length. So if it's like longer than a certain amount, certain styles of architecture needs to be put in place on the facades. But yeah, I don't think there's an issue with 3 separate buildings.
And then for Roger, since this proposal also includes an SIP, are you going to alter or improve the facade of the existing apartments, or would that building remain largely as it is?
It would remain largely as it is.
Okay. And I guess you've read the neighbors' comments. I have not driven by recently, so I don't know the current state, but I guess the neighbors are indicating some additional concern for aesthetics and trash cleanup on the property. And we can't enforce that with zoning, but just to bring that to your attention again.
Yeah, yes, I am aware. I am working very closely with the tenants that are there, changing some of the tenants that are there. The current tent or storage that's out front is just a temporary structure and for snow removal. I was trying to understand what was involved in that, and I was doing most of it myself. So that will be going down shortly. In general, the back of the building has no trash. I've cleaned up back there. I cut down overgrowing trees, etc. And there's nothing back there along the sides. There are a couple people that park their bikes in front. And there's one guy that does accumulate some stuff at one end of the building, but that's going to be coming to an end in the next 6-7 weeks.
And
so
does the SIP include a landscaping plan?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't want to monopolize, but maybe we could look at that and make sure that there's robust screening on the back end between
So right now, the back of that property has numerous trees growing along there, and there's one there shown as a large tree. There have been a lot of self-propagating growth along the fence. In general, I did cut down some of that when I first bought the property. Kind of thought that the neighbors would appreciate having all those weed trees gone. And I didn't like the fact that they were rubbing on the roof of the existing building, etc.
Is it feasible to plant, I don't want to specify a particular type, but arborvitae or some sort of more screening oriented plant? Is there room to do that along that parcel line?
There would be room to do that. The current fence is 6 feet tall along there. Okay. So as you can imagine, it would take quite a while for it to have much of an impact. And frankly, the existing houses have a lot of landscaping across the back of their properties already. But I'm not saying I'm not not saying I'm not willing to do that, but there is a
And-
fair bit of screening.
And the
occurring.
fence is like a privacy fence, so it's not see-through?
Correct.
Would you be willing to, as part of the condition on the SIP, just record that the property owner shall maintain a 6-foot privacy fence in good working order or something to that effect? I think what we're just trying to do is trying to maintain for any future property owners that kind of sense of screening between the nearby property owners in this property.
Yeah, if that's a question for me, that would be fine. Yes.
Does that make sense, Abby? Can we put that on the SIP?
Totally. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, any other questions before I start with mine? Any other questions? Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, it's not so much a question. It's, I guess, since the last time we looked at this, I've changed my view on this. And while I'm less concerned about the back, because the back against the neighbors is not really going to change, but it's equally concerned with the lack of frontage on these houses that seem to be crammed right up on the curb. And when I go through the neighborhood, it is literally 100% single family residential. And most of the houses are set back. And it seems like this is really creating a sort of an intrusive front going on to University Avenue. And even with cars coming in out of the driveway, just visual sight lines, it doesn't seem to me it's set back far enough. And I just think it doesn't work with everything else in the neighborhood. It's 100% different than this. And while I appreciate the sort of the desire to infill, I think it's just too much.
So Abby, you want to answer the setback thing? Is that what city is
Yeah, I
asking?
believe that the setbacks that they're proposing are 16 feet, if I recall from the drawings. I'm pulling up DCI map right now because I went through and measured the front setbacks for the nearby homes,
Okay.
and they are quite varied. So let me see
But
here.
that 16 feet is from the curb, not from, because there's a sidewalk and everything else there. So from the distance from the sidewalk to the front of these is rather short, something like 6 feet, is it not?
Can
there's
the
really
applicant clarify the setback from the front lot line while I measure some of the nearby ones here?
Okay.
Yeah, I can answer that. This is Kevin
Yeah, okay, I
Burrow.
see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 16 feet from the property line, actually. So we
From the
still do
property.
have additional 10 feet.
All right. I guess I wasn't looking quite correctly. I wasn't seeing what was the sidewalk and what was not the sidewalk, but I still think it's a lot of frontage up close to the street, but thank you for clarifying that.
And these, the properties along this stretch, they actually do have a bit of a shorter setback than what would be traditional for R1 zoning, because the road was widened and the city, this is going back decades, but the city acquired additional property. So for example, this is a rough measurement based on an aerial photograph, so it's by no means exact. But the single family home just to the east looks like it's about 16.5 feet. And then the one that's one lot further east, I believe is even closer.
Yeah.
It's,
What about to the west? Because there's
yeah, let me check here.
Yeah,
I'll
that was
skip
one of my
over
problems with the drawing, is that it showed no other property. I couldn't see any comparison to how this fits with what was to the left and right of it.
Yep, the one, so skipping over the single family home that would come down, you're correct that the one immediately to the west of this lot looks like it's at about 27.1.
Yeah.
And then the one just west of that is at about 21. There's kind of a mix along that stretch. There's a few lots down that's probably, let's see here, appears to be about 8.5.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
That's small. One of the concerns, I even on my own property once was told I couldn't put a garage. I live on a side lot because my garage would be in someone else's front yard and would block their view because it sticks closer to the street. than the average of the houses. And of course, that's what this appeared to me to be, that the house right next to it's going to look out their front window and they're going to see the wall off to the right. And I don't know how everybody else feels about that. But you're right, they're varied as it goes down the block, but
Yeah, I guess I would make the argument that the new townhomes are more similar to what exists on the block now. In my opinion,
Mhm.
the property that appears out of alignment when you walk along that stretch is the 10 unit that's set pretty far back. And I feel like adding the townhomes would actually create a nice street edge and improve that.
This is Roger. I'd also like to point out that in the community meeting we had, that the owner directly to the west was in that meeting and had some questions about the proposed laundry room, etc., and then caring for the trees along the property line. But I would say that he generally supported.
okay, so he wasn't concerned about what this view out the front of the house.
No,
Yep.
he was
with
generally in
that.
support of this.
Right.
Yeah, he had
Right.
questions about the trees.
So John, you're done?
Yeah, I'm done for now.
Okay, Commissioner Gretchen?
Yeah, I think one of my concerns would be the amount of impermeable surface that's added to the lot and whether on-site infiltration will be adequate to prevent sort of runaway overflow water from a major storm event down University Avenue, which is on and off prone to flooding. I see a retention pond, but I'm also seeing quite a bit more impermeable surface here with roofs, and some of the buildings are quite spread out from where that retention pond is. So I just would like some clarification about how that's going to be handled and if we've thought about every measure for there.
Roger?
Dan Perry, do you care to answer that from Beer Becker?
Yeah, I can answer that. We are meeting the city's redevelopment standards for the stormwater, and we'll be capturing like most of that roof and parking that goes there. Well, it's all going to go to that basin. So I think we are handling everything we need to handle.
And there aren't any stormwater measures in place now because the property is grandfathered in, correct? Right now, it just runs off and it runs to the north to University Avenue. What
Right.
doesn't infiltrate, correct?
Right.
But
Yeah.
you got
And we
a
have
lawn there.
good soil borings over there, so we should be infiltrating most of the water.
And this will also go to the stormwater resources mission, Abby, or did it already go there?
I don't know if it needs to go because I believe that they're meeting the city standards. So I think that it can
Okay.
be reviewed internally, and Eric Sorensen has taken a look at it. I had a question that came up during the neighborhood meeting from some folks who lived on Park Street. And I ran it by Eric because they had some issues with flooding of their properties, and they wanted to make sure that there wasn't any additional runoff to the east. And Eric had already reviewed the stormwater plan, and he said that what exists on site right now is very limited controls. The after construction effect will be a vast improvement over current conditions, and no water will, right now the site drains to the north, and it will continue to the north even after the stormwater standards. So there won't be any changes to properties further to the east.
Okay, thank you. Gretchen, you have more questions?
Is there a way to add more on-site infiltration on the east side, like a French drain and rain garden on that edge of the property? Or are we out of space there?
We're out of
Because
space.
that used to be grass.
Yeah, it's all going to be a bioretention basin. So it all will be a big rain garden, basically.
Okay, well, if it's good with the city, I'm satisfied.
Are you done, Gretchen? Okay, Commissioner Paulson?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up something Abby said. I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. The current zoning is R2. That's correct?
That's correct.
So a 0 lot line duplex would be a conditional use. So the only issue is, of course, that because there's an existing multifamily, you can't have more than one principal use on a parcel. But they could conceivably hive off these as separate parcels and do a 0 lot line townhouse. So the relief we're being asked to give is not that much different than what the R2 conditional use standards envision. Is that a fair characterization?
I agree with that. I did talk to the applicant briefly about going that route, and I think that it's in the city's benefit that the entire site be rezoned to BDD so that we can require stormwater management for the whole entirety of the property.
Correct.
That it be brought in current standards.
And the 0 lot line townhouses or duplexes currently permitted in the R2 would allow for a front yard setback of 20 feet. So a 16-foot is not that different. And we measure that setback in the R2 from the property line, correct?
From the property line to the edge of the eave, yes.
Can whoever's driving the bus zoom back into where we were, where it measured the setback? Because there's a bump out that just a little to the left of where your cursor is. The bump out 16 feet is to the front edge of the building, but there's like a stairway. What is the 11.58 inches measuring to?
There should be an elevation in there that shows the raised stairway to get up to the front. Yeah, there we go.
So it's like a porch and a stairway. It's not really. In normal zoning, would we count that as the front of the building, or the front of the building is the main part of the building?
In normal zoning, we would count that bump out. That's something that we're looking to change in the new zoning ordinance because we want to encourage front porches and more engagement with the sidewalk and the street. But currently we would measure to the edge of whatever that roof overhang is on that front gable.
Yeah, it would. You'd hate to lose that architectural feature, I think.
Right, but it does point that your 4 feet reduction is much bigger than 4 feet. I mean, it's not 20 to 16, it's going to be 20 to 11 or 20 to 10.
20 to 12, yeah.
Yeah, something like
Yep.
that.
That is true.
But then the existing house to the east is also not in conformance.
Yeah, and then the house that's 2 lots to the east, I think is the one that was moved.
Yeah, off of South Avenue.
They must have gotten a zoning variance when they moved that house because their front setback certainly does not meet normal R1 standards. It appears to be, it's probably about 12 at the most. I didn't have a chance to look up in the address file to see if they got a zoning variance for that.
R1 and R2 both have the same front yard setbacks.
That's correct. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. It's R2.
Okay, Commissioner Paulson, more questions or you're done? Okay, anyone else have any more questions? Gretchen?
Couple additional comments. Or question first, have we heard from the neighbor on the west about their opinion? If it would block their view?
Yeah, they came to the neighborhood meeting and they had a concern specifically about the laundry facility in the back and what hours of the day that would be accessible because they have a dog, and they were concerned that if people were doing laundry and walking out there really late at night, that it would be disruptive to the neighborhood because their dog would bark. And then their other concern or question was related to the trees between their two properties. They did not express any concerns about the setback or the building placement, to my recollection.
Okay. My comment about the trees along the back, because I was just looking at Google Earth, it looks like the deciduous trees along the back are quite extensive that the neighbors own. My concern about adding arborvitae there would be that they wouldn't perform well if there are a lot of shade trees, and it might not actually look that good in the long run to require that to be added.
Yes. I did not realize there was a fence there. The fence kind of takes the place of the arborvitae. Yep. Thanks. Yeah.
There was something else, which was actually the main comment, but now I'm not remembering it. I do appreciate that. I think it will actually reinforce the look of the neighborhood from the street view for people passing by. That's clear. I don't remember the other comment.
Okay, so anyone else has any? So, Gretchen, you're done? Okay, anyone else? Okay, so I got few questions here. So Abby, so I will start with Roger. So in the last meeting, I thought, Roger, you and your wife said that we intend to improve the architectural appearance of the existing dwelling units, and then the second is that they have annual leases. So reason I ask is that a lot of the people who are complaining is that they were really unhappy with the folks who were living there. They were using some of the language, they were making noises and some of those things, and it may be possible to address them. So, so could you, so right now you were saying you are not going to make any changes to those 10 units. So could you clarify you are or you are not?
Well, we had originally shown some improvements to the front elevation of the existing building, but staff felt that this wasn't the right time to be requesting that improvement. So we removed that from the plans, and that's why I answered that question as I did, because I believe for this particular presentation, that's the right statement. It's absolutely my intention to improve the property. Just as a starter, there's currently asphalt right up to the face of the building, and we'll be taking that out, building that sidewalk, and doing extensive landscaping across the front of that project. It is my goal to put in some flower boxes and other such things that wouldn't really require a building permit. But as far as improvements that required a building permit, we would have to, I believe we would have to return or at least go through, the building department. So as far as that front elevation to the existing building, we're not presenting that, but that is my intention eventually to go there. Yes.
Okay. So do I hear that you have actually annual leases and you probably make an effort to, so, well, I don't know, whatever, the legal procedures are that somehow address the neighborhood concern that I don't know, maybe if there are 10 units, it just happens, but anything you could do to help out that,
Yep. So,
Go ahead.
So to speak to that, I've only owned the property for roughly 7 months. I purchased it from a large property management group. And this is all I have right here. I am looking to invest a lot of money in improvements up front. And I have absolutely every intention of making the existing units a very nice, very quiet, good neighborhood place to live. To kind of back up to my point, I inherited all 10 of those leases. I have over the last 6 or 7 months gotten to know the tenants. I know who I want to move in and who I want to move out. who I want to keep and who I want to move out. I am absolutely not accepting anything less than either a 12-month extension or a new 12-month lease. So I think I strongly promote that the police calls or any disturbances are going to be substantially reduced in the coming future, in the near future.
Okay, thank you. So I think, and we already talked about the landscaping and all of those things. So you already said that you're going to put some flower beds. If there's anything at the back, Gretchen said there are trees and maybe shading may not allow arborvitae or some of it. But, talking to the neighborhood, if there's anything which you could do in terms of landscaping to bring peace and bring, some happiness there. So, well, that would be a good thing. But it's a grandfather, so the city can't really do a whole lot about those 10 units which you have there. So another question is for Abby and you, and there's one of the citizens, he has a concern. Jenny, I think that where are they going to put their garbage and recyclables? And I don't know where they put now. So there will be some way where they will be able to put them and they don't end up on the University Avenue where they will be not really helping the traffic.
Yeah, I went down University on Sunday night to look at that because the terraces are quite narrow along University. And I remember this from walking there a lot, that the snow oftentimes is overflowing onto the sidewalk there because of the narrowness of the grass terrace. And all up and down that stretch, almost all the carts were on the terrace. So they were not in the driveway. And that was what Jenny had noted. And I looked into that. And I know Roger was checking in too. And on the website, with the instructions from Pelletary Waste Systems, they do allow those smaller carts to be placed on the terrace as they're doing now. I did wonder if the number of carts was going to prompt Pelletary to require a central dumpster in the back. I have left them 2 calls. I have not heard back, but Roger did note and forward me an email from someone he got a hold of at Pelletary who said that they would not be backing in and out of that driveway. So our understanding is that they are going to rely on the cart system as they do now. The 10 units don't generate a whole lot of trash, so they only have a couple of carts. It's not 10 separate carts, and Roger actually goes and pushes those out to the curb each week.
Wow.
So he takes care of that. But then obviously with the introduction of the townhomes, I think that would mean 5 more trash carts and 5 more recycling, because it's highly unlikely that they're going to share them. And they will not have a curb cut that they can place them in, because one of the good things about this project is it's consolidating to only 1 driveway. So those would need to be placed on the terrace.
So what happens in winter when there's snow there?
They're on the terrace now.
Oh, okay.
They're just
Okay.
piled up on the terrace now. Some people have shoveled out kind of a small area, Roger. I'm not sure if that's what you did, but they're all up and down that whole stretch. They're putting them on the terrace.
Yep.
Okay.
I'd like to add that part of the lease or the ownership of the new 6-6 townhomes would require storage of their bins inside their garages. As far as the 10 unit goes, in general, we have two trash cans that go out and 2 recycle cans that are taken out, and I take them out there. I have only just started to understand the property in full. It is my intention just to direct whoever's doing the snow removal going forward to keep a portion of the terrace clear to snow so that we can put those cans there. I did ask Abby briefly about the possibility of putting some permeable pavers on the terrace that we might use to better put those carts.
Okay, thank you. So when I go through all the comments from the citizens, So I think we have addressed the stormwater, we have addressed those, Roger will try to address them over time, some of the noises or bad language from there, the landscaping and this trash and recyclables. Are there any things, other things which you remember, Abby, from the citizens' comments which we could address and should discuss?
I can't remember any other items off the top of my head.
Okay. I think
Commissioner-
yeah, Gretchen, go ahead, please.
Could you discuss how you plan to manage the traffic for the 10 current residents when the construction happens in the front?
That was aimed at me. Is that correct, Gretchen? Well, the objective is to build the first 2 units more to the eastern side of the property to begin with. And during that time, we would I need to talk to the building department a little bit about this. It would be my goal to get the 2 most eastern buildings constructed and then follow up with the retention pond prior to occupancy being granted. And in that way, we would maintain access in and out of the existing driveway. In general, there'll be room to park in there while we're doing construction. Frankly, there's only like 7 cars that come and go from there. So it is going to be a bit of a juggling act, but it's a construction site and we will manage it. I have informed everybody who lives there about what's going on. So far, they've all said they're okay with it. They don't anticipate any problems.
Okay, great. Any more questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions at this time? Does anybody else have, any of the commissioners have any questions at this time? Well, then I need some motion.
I will move, pulling up the staff notes here. I will move, we're on the
Right to-
GIP, right?
Yep.
I move to recommend approval of the GIP to the council contingent on the items listed in the staff comments. I can read them if you want, but.
Well, that's probably, well. Abby,
Public Works or Water Resource Management approval of a stormwater management plan, and if necessary, a stormwater management agreement, resolution of all engineering staff comments from the plans of 1/18/22.
Okay, need a second.
Lavish will second that, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Slavish. Any questions or comments now? Any questions or comments now? Okay, so the motion is to approve the rezoning from R2 to Planned Development District, General Implementation Plan to allow for construction of 4 buildings, duplexes and laundry and efficiency at 7107 to 7109 University Avenue. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 3. This is the specific implementation plan to allow for construction of 4 buildings, duplexes and laundry efficiency at 7107, 7109 University Avenue LLC. Abby, do you want to add anything more?
No, our recommendation is for approval of the SIP contingent on the Common Council approving the GIP with the contingencies, staff approval of a lighting plan that meets the city's outdoor lighting code. And I've clarified with the applicant that that would need to include any existing lighting into the calculations as well. We have not seen a photometric plan yet. And then also approval of a final plat.
Okay.
I will,
Sure,
I'll make that motion and I'll add in property shall maintain a 6-foot privacy fence on the southern end of the property in good working order.
Would you, well, okay, so, okay, need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Elder Ramsey. So, so I think that Commissioner Paulson, so you think that the fence is good enough? You don't really think to add any landscaping or any of those?
Well, if there's already a fence there,
Mm,
that serves the main purpose of screening. And the idea of keeping it in good working order is just at the property owner's expense, needs to make sure it's not falling apart or, that it's
Okay.
attractive, consistent with the residential character of the adjoining properties. So.
Yeah, I did go there and I did see that fence, and it is the kind of fence which you described. There's not see-through. So, okay. Any questions or comments at this time? Any questions or comments at this time? Okay, all those in favor of approving the specific implementation plan to allow for construction of 4 buildings, that's duplexes and laundry and efficiency on 7107 to 7109 University Avenue LLC.
I do have one more question. Did we want to impose a hours of operation restriction on the laundry facility? I don't think
Okay.
we had resolved that.
Would you want to add that, Roger? You have some thoughts on it?
I do. I think it would absolutely be my intention that that was included in the lease or just in the general implementation of running the property, because we don't want people walking around at night, in the parking lot and making more noise, etc. I haven't, my only concern about doing it right here, right now, is I have given no thought or no research into what the proper hours are. If the commission wants it, I guess I would say from hours of operation would be 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., maybe 9 p.m.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm hesitant to kind of micromanage with that. I'm fine leaving it as it is.
Okay.
But if someone really wanted to, we could do it. Sorry.
Okay, Commissioner Gretchen and then Commissioner Schaefer.
As a former chef, I would find those hours overly restrictive, and having to work doubles on weekends and then get my clothes washed before my next morning shift would be a pain. It would force me to have to go somewhere else to do laundry in the middle of the night, which I would feel very unsafe about. I prefer that we not micromanage this and leave it up to the landowner.
Okay, Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I concur with Gretchen. I don't think there's going to be huge use. All of us have backyards and dogs next door, and people come and go on their own properties all the time. And we don't restrict those. I don't see this as not like a commercial laundromat. And so, yes, it may upset the dog every once in a while, but we all have that every once in a while. So I don't support putting restrictions on that.
Sounds good.
Okay, all right. So we are back to the specific implementation plan to allow for construction of 4 buildings, duplexes, and laundry and efficiency on 7107 to 7109 University Avenue, with all the recommendations as stated before. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 4. This is preliminary plat at 7107, 7109 University Avenue LLC. This is the same thing. So do you want to say something, Abby?
The recommendation is for approval contingent on resolution of engineering staff recommendations.
Okay, this is the preliminary plat, so need a motion.
I'll move approval of the preliminary plat, subject to resolution of engineering staff recommendations.
Okay, need second.
Bergman Herman, second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Herman. Any questions or comments? So Abby, what is that what you should be concerned about in this one and that plat? there-
This is just delineating the new lots that are going to be created. The main thing that we were taking a look at is the creation of separate 0 lot line townhome units, as was described. And then we were looking at access, and we did confer with our fire department to make sure that they can access that unit, that new studio unit that's going to be created on the southwest side of the property. And they replied back and said that they had reviewed it and they had adequate access to that property.
Okay, so nobody has any concerns as far as you know that.
No.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay, otherwise, all those in favor of the motion to approve the preliminary plat for 7107 to 7109 University Avenue LLC with all the attached recommendations, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passed unanimously. We are on to the next item now. Item number 5. This is the general implementation plan amendment for rezoning to allow for renter occupied townhomes in addition to owner occupied. This is conservancy band 2411, 2413, 2415, 2417, and 2419 Parmenter Street. Abby?
Yep. I kind of gave the background on why this is requiring a GIP amendment during the public hearing. The only thing that I would like to add is that our staff recommendation is against the change. And the reason for that is we felt that it was pretty clear when the Common Council reviewed this project initially that their intent and a part of the reason why they selected this proposal over the other competing proposal when the city sold the land was because this proposal included 19 owner occupied townhomes. I'm sure many of the Plan Commission members are familiar with some of the issues that the city is facing with really not having that much construction of any owner occupied units. It's been a key focus for a couple of our Common Council members. We also have a task force of the Workforce Housing Committee right now that's taking a look at how we can create more owner occupied affordable opportunities, which has been inordinately challenging in Middleton. You know, our staff we're not going to lose any sleep over whether this gets changed to renter occupied. We understand that there is a market for renter housing. We think that the developer has done a nice job laying out the case, and they have marketed the units for sale, albeit at a price that is pretty substantially higher than what was initially discussed. But on the other hand, we understand that there have been a lot of changes with material pricing and their labor shortages and other cost increases, in part, you know, due to the pandemic and other issues. And so, you know, we can see both sides. The reason that we recommended against was more to uphold what we felt was very recent action by our Common Council, and our staff's you know, position here is aligned with what we feel the Common Council's position was stated.
Hey, thank you, Abby.
That's all I have.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Paulson and then Commissioner Slavish.
Yeah, so first just a question, and I see Taylor here, he might know the answer. When the GIP was being approved at some point in time, maybe 3-4 years ago, I remember that at the time you tried to change the townhouses to just be replaced with another multifamily building. Do you remember that?
Yeah, so let me talk to that. So the GIP was approved in spring of 2019. Then COVID hit when we were going to start construction. in March and April, I think it was April of 2020, we came to the Plan Commission to switch out the 19 townhomes for 50 or 60 apartments.
Okay.
Just because of our fear of, where the world was turning and that kind of a thing. And looking at the market. But yeah, I mean, Plan Commission said no. We proceeded to construct this first phase. Again, to reiterate what Abby said, we're not looking to turn this permanently to rental. We just want the flexibility to sell or rent depending on where the market is. At this point, we're in a crunch with our bank loan coming due soon. And the bank telling us we either have to sell them or rent them. And, after trying to sell these for 2 years, putting money into marketing, paying staff, we put ads in local paper, built a website, banners. We even spent significant attorney's fees drafting association documents because a 0 lot line townhome development hasn't been done in Middleton before. So we kind of had to, spend some extra money on attorney's fees there. But we did record the association docs last year. And, we're making every effort to try to sell these, but, just kind of at the beginning of this year, just kind of had to make a decision where, looking at, COVID and how that's changed the market, now we're dealing with Ukraine and construction costs going up, but also I think broadly looking at how habits have changed, I think, people are looking at rentals differently. They're looking at simplifying their lifestyle and not tying up capital in housing, but instead maybe investing those funds in different investment vehicles that can earn consistent higher returns. So again, just kind of looking for flexibility here so that we can provide something, a townhome rental that isn't currently available in Middleton right now. For example, Madison has other townhome rentals, but Middleton doesn't have those. So, sorry, long answer.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to remember the procedure. And I'm gonna vote in favor of allowing rental because to me, on the planning side, we shouldn't care whether something is owned or rented. This is going to be obviously a higher level rental, so we're not worried about property maintenance or the character of the neighborhood or anything like that. So I'm going to support allowing rental, but I just have to be honest, you're never going to get it through council because since it was funded with TIF and part of the developers agreement, that's that's way above our pay grade as planners, but yeah, that's all I have to say. So thanks.
Thank you.
Can I make a note on that? The TIF, we did, Abby, Mark, and Matt Fleming and I have all discussed that. For what it is worth when we get to council, or if we make it to council, etc. The TIF agreement doesn't mention owner occupied, it just says townhomes. So that's also been, for what it's worth.
Okay.
Above my pay grade. Yep.
Thank you, Taylor. Next one is Commissioner Slavish and then Commissioner Bruce.
I would generally agree with Kurt. It's not, I don't think it's really our place as planning commission members to determine whether this is necessarily rental or, owner occupied. I did have a question about the TIF, but because there was TIF provided on this project, and maybe Taylor, you can answer this, we would assume there's not going to be any change in the valuation or the increment generator here, moving it from owner occupied to rental, because I would think that would be, making that commitment that there is no change in whatever guarantee may have been put in place by the developer to the city in that regard, that in fact would not change, even if the use changes.
Correct. And I mean, and that's our hope too. This is developer finance TIF, so we had to take out a separate loan against the increment the increment revenue stream that was anticipated. Therefore, we've got to keep the bank happy as well on that one. So yeah, based on the financial modeling that we've run, we're confident that the increment will be at or above what was originally anticipated, especially with we upgraded finishes from what we originally anticipated, anticipating owner occupied units here. For example, upgraded the fridge, is like a $3,000 upgrade to have a nicer refrigerator. So, yeah, we anticipate the increment will be higher or at or above what was projected.
Okay, thank you.
So next one is Commissioner Bruce and then Commissioner Grichin.
Taylor, is it your thoughts that as you proceed with construction that you would continue to offer either rental or owner occupied, or is it just the 5 units that are existing now that would go rental?
Yeah, I think we're looking at for all of the 3 phases to have the flexibility for owner or rental, just so we can adapt to the market. I think Terrence said if somebody was willing to come up and buy all 19, we'd sell them in a heartbeat. But that's just not the situation that we're in right now.
It just, looking at the development plan, it seems to me that, the next 2 buildings are, have more desirable locations and would maybe appeal to an owner occupied occupant more, and it might be more palatable if if you could do that kind of a step by step rather than all the townhomes becoming rental.
Yeah, I think where Terrence left it, just because of how the association documents are drafted, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. We can sell units because of how the condo declaration or the HO homeowners association was set up, because this technically isn't a condo. So the owners association does allow for long-term rentals. There's a restriction on short-term. We don't want Airbnb type situations, but yeah.
Could you time limit the the rental occupancy? In other words, if you were given a period of time with which to work through the market conditions, would that be enough?
You mean to allow it for rental for a certain period and then require us to sell them? I think our bank would have an issue with that, just because of, it's an unfortunate situation that we're in, because we didn't think that this was necessarily a zoning item because of even, Abby was saying, typically owner versus rental isn't a zoning item. So we kind of thought we'd have this flexibility after we tried to sell them and it didn't work. So I don't know if we would be up for ticking time bomb where, we can rent them for so long and then, now all of a sudden we've got to turn them to sales. I just think we just want the ability to have flexibility to kind of react to where the market goes, because again, I think long-term, given I'm in largely a multifamily development company, but I do think that long-term, when I look at habits for generations that are coming up and looking at credit cards and, hey, let's lease a car rather than buy a car. Let's, why buy a movie? I'm going to subscribe to Netflix. It's all these rental services. So I see less of the ownership mentality and more of the rental mentality. So I just think, my only holdup is just that this might be a long-term change, and in part catalyzed by COVID and kind of the fallout from that.
The reason I ask these questions is just to, I personally have some reticence to support the change, only because, as the staff had pointed out, this was a competitive process. The fact that the townhomes were owner occupied was one of the reasons that the city selected the development team and the development proposal. And if it goes to the council, I was just, maybe there's ways to make the change less permanent or more palatable.
And I appreciate No, I appreciate that. I mean, I also do want to point out that, you know, unlike there, you know, with the RFP process, when we originally got this site in 2018, 2019, there were two, you know, we were one of two parties that responded, and we were the only party that was willing to pay the city for the land that they purchased. And at the time, the per square foot value on the land was high, but Terrence was, you know, willing and able to pay full price for what the city paid rather than negotiate them down like he had it done in reverse situation with that Stonehorse Green property. But you know, so again, a large component of us winning the RFP was the other developer that responded wasn't going to pay for the land. He was going to pay $1 for it. So so I also just want to keep that in context that, yeah, the owner occupied was a component, but I don't know whether it was owner occupied or they just liked the townhome, you know, bringing townhomes to Middleton, which otherwise are not there.
Commissioner Bruce, you're done. So next one is Commissioner Gretchen and then Elder Ramsey.
I don't think Commissioner Bruce was done.
Yeah, he's done. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm done, Gretchen. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I was looking at this today and thinking what an odd way to solve a market problem, to change the zoning. And so then I quickly looked at the two most recent home sales in Middleton today. One was a 2-unit that sold for $277, and one was a single family on Maywood that sold for $350. And I thought perhaps a similar sized accommodation is just overpriced. That was just a thought that came up when I looked at the situation in front of us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think we originally projected that these were going to be able to come under the costs that we locked in, but with labor costs and supply costs going skyrocketing, and you know, we have to pay you know, we're not the builder, so we've also have to pay a builder profit and overhead. So these came in dramatically overpriced, and we are selling, you know, when we were going to sell these at the prices listed, we were selling them at cost. We weren't making money. I mean, the reality is, and I'll be transparent, the money is in the 87 apartments next door. That's what we wanted. And so, you know, we were doing the townhomes, you know, to follow through with the vision that, you know, that the city wanted some mix of housing stock type here. But again, you know, we're not making profit on the townhomes, and when we rent them, we're renting them at cost too. So not making money off those either.
Yeah, I guess one thought is typically it costs more to rent something than to purchase it. So I'm curious how we're going to actually fill the housing by allowing rentals here. Could you explain that?
There's been
on a cash flow basis for the occupier. I'm talking.
Yeah,
about.
no, that's a good question. Yeah, there's been a lot of interest in renting these 4 townhomes that we have right now, or sorry, 5. There are 5 townhomes in the first phase. There's been a lot of interest where people are looking at the neighboring 87 apartments, and they're saying, hey, I actually kind of want to rent those townhomes. Can you do that? One situation, an example, we've got a professor couple where they don't want to buy because they don't know how long they'll be here, but they want, you know, the ability to have the garage that they drive into, and then the walk-up unit. And then we also have some, you know, young families where it's a divorce situation where they want to stay in Middleton, be close to Cromery and Middleton High School. But, you know, they don't want to take care of the maintenance that would be associated with homeownership. So I think these will rent, I project, rather quickly when we turn them to rentals. And, you know, again, it's our job as the developer to find a price that's appropriate on how to get these rented as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. So I also kind of don't feel that this is really a zoning issue, but that's how it was presented originally. And as it was a competitive bid and it was before the council, and this is what they wanted, I'm going to vote just in support of the council on this one, although I'm not opposed to the idea of it.
Are you done, Gretchen? Okay, so the next one is Elder Ramsey and then Commissioner Schaefer.
To be perfectly clear about the process, when we went through this process, it was very clear that the council wanted an owner-occupied component to this project. As a matter of fact, we went back a couple of different times. So to hang your hat on the fact that the only reason you got this RFP was because you paid the full price for the property, while that was one piece of the puzzle, the other very large piece of the puzzle was the fact that this was going to be owner-occupied. From some of the statements you've made, where we knew we weren't going to make any money, we're going to sell these at cost. Those are interesting statements in light of the fact that you brought to the council a plan to have affordable, there were going to be a couple of affordable properties too, but you brought forth a plan to have owner occupied. So I find those statements a little unusual. I was one of them who said at the council level, I was one of them that said, I won't support any project here that doesn't have an owner occupied component. I'm going to stick to that. And while I understand that the Plan Commission, as both Mike Slavich and Kurt Paulson has said, it's not really a Plan Commission issue, whether it's rented or sold. But I will vote against amending this GIP. I think you're going to have a particular hard time when you go to council if you are trying to change all 19 units into rental. So in other words, you've taken the 19 owner occupied and are going to make them all rental. I think you're going to have a very difficult time with that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that feedback. I mean, I think, and again, you know, just looking for your feedback as the Plan Commission is, our goal will be, we're seeking flexibility, because, you know, the last thing I want is for us not to complete this project because we couldn't get them sold or rented, or, you know, we weren't allowed to rent them and we couldn't sell them, and just for this to sit empty. And that's not a threat. That's just the reality of, you know, we can't get a loan from a bank to complete this development if the first phase was horribly unsuccessful. But again, yeah, I'm looking for flexibility here, not a finite, you know, rent or sell. But yeah, again, appreciate your feedback.
Thank you. Commissioner Schaefer and then Commissioner Gritchen.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I hear your arguments about market changes and everything, but you're also in business, and many businesses succeed and many businesses fail because you're trying to be a forecaster of the future. You can't necessarily, but I don't think it's the city's responsibility to bail out what ultimately became a less desirable set of factors from what you originally proposed to do with the space. I also think that I personally think you're dreaming if you think you're going to easily and quickly rent these things. If somebody's going to pay the kind of rent necessarily for this, such as you're saying, a university professor, they can also buy this and resell it and make a profit potentially if the market continues to go up. So I don't see that the people you're talking about who can afford this kind of rent are just going to simply walk away if they can't rent, if that's not an option. So I concur with my colleagues, and I think I'm going to vote no on this. That's it.
And my question, just as a follow-up, is just, you know, so if those people want to buy it, we're willing to sell it, but I've got a waiting list of renters and I have no interested parties for buyers. And I'm not looking for a bailout. I'm looking for flexibility on something that I think it's a gray area, and that Matt Fleming and I have gone back and forth, and we're in general agreement. I don't want to speak for him, but that this is not necessarily a zoning issue, whether they rent or sell. Any house in Middleton can be rented out, right? So to be restricted, now given this is a GIP, and I understand that this is part of the RFP process, but it just, you know, we're at a loss right now, and, you know, can't proceed with the development, which isn't asking us to be bailed out, but just asking for flexibility and the user, and not being discriminatory towards those that want to rent versus buy. I you know, I find that somewhat offensive because we have a lot of great renters that pay far over what a mortgage would cost on a house. And I can't tell them not to do that, or it doesn't make financial sense, because I don't know what their experiences are. I don't know if they're in Madison for for a year or two, and they need the flexibility and don't want to be trapped with a house. So again, I just
If that
try
was
not
the-
to be discriminatory towards the user.
Yeah, but if that was the issue, why didn't you lay that out in the first place? When you first proposed this and first got the city involved with this thing, that wasn't part of your plan and wasn't part of the proposal. And now, so you're changing what was your plan that you had proposed to do with this building and asking us to then go ahead and change what's going on to adapt to your willingness to desire to change it. So it's not that we don't feel like we want to, cater to renters. I like renters and that's good and important, but that wasn't what this project was promoted to be. And now you want to change it to that. So that's where my concern lies in this.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think bottom line is, had COVID not occurred, we could have sold these for the price point that I think would have been attractive for most buyers. But that's just, it's the hand we were dealt. Is timing is everything. And I again wish with everything in me that we could have sold these, because to me, I'd rather focus on the rental properties, and sell these off so that the homeowners can take care of them.
Sure. I guess, Abby, is just the fact is that this has to go through us to go to the council?
Well,
Do we have
typically
to take action for the council to reconsider this?
Yeah, typically the plan commission advises the council on rezoning matters, and this is a rezoning.
Okay. But even a negative vote, it's still going to go to the council.
Either way, it will go to the council, yes.
All right, thank you. I'm done.
Okay, so Commissioner Gretchen and then Commissioner Paulson.
Well, I think when the market was showing during COVID that housing was going to become an issue and prices were going to become an issue, it was a strange decision to then intentionally add more expensive upgrades when you had the zoning in place. And as it's before us as the zoning commission, I'm going to have to stick with the zoning. And we just did pass owner occupied build out of affordable housing in Middleton. So it is possible. It sounds like this was a choice to make it unaffordable. That's all.
Thank you, Gretchen. Commissioner Paulson?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that for my day job where I study housing, I did have to recently pull these numbers. So just for people's benefit, the cost of all of the inputs, including labor to single family construction, which this would fall under, has gone up in the last 2 years, 30%. So that's just part of the business. A 30% increase in cost, it's hard to make up at that price point. But I just have a question, I guess, for Abby or Taylor. Suppose I bought one of these, because I'm obviously just have tons of cash just sitting around with nothing to do. I just bought the middle unit and I decided to rent it out just with a lease that I signed with my cousin. How would anyone know, and how would that be enforced?
Abby or Taylor?
Would the condo documents or the association documents prohibit that right now?
The condo documents would prohibit short-term leases. Obviously, we'd have to be aware of the lease in place, but Abby, I guess you'd maybe speak on to
Yeah,
zoning.
I don't think the intent was for there to be future restrictions on the sale of the property or the rental of the property. I think the intent was for these 19 to each be sold off to individual entities or owners, and that it would proceed from there. I certainly know that the intent was never for T-Wall Enterprises to continue to own the 19 units. But I don't think that there
Is
would
that
be
spelled
any,
out in the GIP though? I mean, it's a 36-page GIP and we're referencing one sentence that says owner occupied. I mean, not to be confrontational, but it's frustrating for me that we're looking at, we got the first phase of development done. we're not doing phase 2 and 3 if we can't have flexibility on phase 1. And
I think
that's
that
just
there
the
were
reality that we're dealt.
There were 3 areas in the GIP where it mentioned owner occupied, and T-Wall wrote the GIP. It
Right.
wasn't written by the
That's-
city.
That's
It
what I
was
was gonna say, yeah.
proposed
Yeah.
by the developer.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of conversations when this was being proposed. I mean, my recollection is very similar to Alderman Ramsey's, that although I would agree with Taylor that the sale of the property was also a key factor. The council wanted the full value back. But the owner occupied component, and I mean, we got into a lot of detailed discussions around that, including talking about the sale price, which at the time was, $400,000, and calculating what type of household would be able to purchase a $400,000 unit, and how much of a down payment they would need to bring with them if they were only earning 80% of Dane County median income. And I remember that at one point, the other developer who was competing to try to acquire the property was trying to modify his proposal to have an owner occupied component, because he knew how important it was for the council to have that. So it was.
Did he modify it that way, or did he modify it that he was going to pay for the property? And either way, it doesn't matter because he wasn't selected. But I just, it's tough looking back at history as far as what was the deciding factor for the council. Bottom line is, this is a planning, the item that's before you is from a zoning standpoint. Is this bad for the city to rent these rather than to sell these? And I think, and if you don't mind me summarizing everyone's points today, there is no compelling zoning land use planning reason against having rentals or discriminating against renters and requiring, individual owners that aren't T-Wall. And so therefore, I hear what everyone's saying, that the council may not like it because the council had in their mind that when they selected the RFP, maybe the council members wanted it, the owner occupied was the sole reason or whatever, or a component. That's not before the plan commission. What's before the plan commission tonight is it a smart zoning decision to allow and to not discriminate against renters?
Okay, so Commissioner Bruce and then Commissioner Gritchen, and I also have a question for you, Taylor, that would you maybe consider just having approval for these units which you have now? That makes some sort of a logic that, you have tried to sell them and you had a hard time selling them. So, there's a resource sitting there and could somehow be used. It could be, either to sell it or rent it, just for the ones which you have now. That may be easier than getting all of them. So,
Yeah.
Commissioner
I think that's
Yeah,
a
go
good point. And I did notice that when the GIP modification was being read, it was just referencing the addresses for phase 1. So technically we would have to go through another notice period, in my opinion, without consulting staff. If we wanted to change all the addresses for all the other GIPs, is that correct, Abby?
I would agree with that, yes.
So therefore, I think what's before you today is just phase 1. If we move forward with phase 2 and 3, then we'll come forward and request that change as well.
Okay, so it's only phase 1. Okay, Commissioner Gretchen.
I would just like to be very clear that I'm not voting against it due to discrimination against renters. I had to move from Middleton down to Madison when I got divorced because I had no equity in my house for 4 years while I went through a contested divorce to use as a down payment. And I had to waste money on rent in Madison for 4 years and commute my kids to school in Middleton every morning and back, and then get myself to school on the bus. There's no discrimination against renters with this. And I absolutely feel for people that need to move out of their houses and split them up. It's extremely difficult.
And to that point, that's one of the people that's on our waiting list is a divorcee that doesn't want to put, they don't want to buy yet. So, but they need the space in the townhomes and they can't have their kids in the apartments. So they just wanted some more space because again, I have 3 young kids, they are loud. So I think the townhomes were, preferred by those
Yeah,
on the waiting list.
I just want to be clear that that's not what the decision is based on. It's not that we only want single family owner occupied. Speaking to another one of your logic pieces, you said that the market is demanding more rent. I think that it's the other way around. It's that developers would prefer more rent. This is what we've heard over and over, that they don't want to sell because they make more money that way. And also, I've read over and over, and I also invest, that most people in America, their only investment that has any sort of guaranteed return is their home. And once they retire, it's the only thing that they don't have to continue to pay for if they've been paying it off while they lived there. And so that logic doesn't line up with everything else that I know. I'm wondering if this needs to go to another committee like workforce, housing, or something else to be looked at.
And can I comment on the profitability? I mean, I think when you have economies of scale, like the 87 unit apartment building next door, there's profitability in rentals. I mean, there's no doubt that's why we do it, is because we cover our covenants with our investors and our lenders. Because as you know, or may know, the lender pretty much owns the project until they're paid off. So since they have the mortgage, but with these townhomes, they're separately owned from the apartments next door, and you lose those economies of scale. Hence the reason in 2020, we came to the Planning Commission saying, hey, these 19 units, they're not efficient. We need apartments here so that we can have the economies of scale that an apartment building does. So I can say in this case, we are not making money and just covering our covenants. Because again, for a bank, we can't just cover the loan payment amount. We have to cover typically a 1.25 debt service coverage ratio, meaning the revenue has to cover more than just that loan payment amount.
Thank you, Taylor. Commissioner Bruce.
Yeah, yes, thank you. I think we need to pass this along to the council because I think there's financial implications to the developer and to the city both that need to be weighed out. As I mentioned before, it's hard for me to be supportive of the change because I think when development proposals are made, and particularly in competitive situations, I think we need to rely on those the developers' statements and that they'll follow through on what they say they're going to do. But if we're really talking about the 5 units and not all of the townhomes, I'm less troubled by that. And but I would not support anything more than the 5 units becoming rental housing, just because of the statements and the PUD that was put in place. Thank you.
Commissioner Slavish.
Yeah, just a final closing comment. Going back to Kurt's analysis about the uptick in construction prices, I think it's important for us to keep in mind that when this decision was made, whether this at the Planning Commission or even at Council, our world was very different than it is today. And when faced with a 30% price increase due to COVID and material shortages and such, that's a very different world today than it was then. And I think it's important for us to at least be cognizant of some degree and maybe potential need for flexibility. I'm not saying we don't stick with the integrity of the process that was laid out way back then, but I think we also should make sure that we're cognizant that things have changed and they've changed for us. And arguably they've changed for developers as well. And I think we should, just keep that in mind before we take our vote today.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
So do we want to just send it to the city council without any recommendations, or do I have a motion?
I was gonna go ahead and make a motion and see what we can get. I would move that we recommend approval of the GIP amendment for the 5 properties in phase 1 to allow renter occupied housing.
Okay, need a second.
Slavish will second that for discussion purposes.
Okay, any further questions or comments? So we are only doing those 5 units. So, and I think they will still try to sell them, but it's giving them the option that they could also rent them if they can sell them. Okay, so the motion is to approve the GIP modification for rezoning
To recommend approval to the council.
Yeah, to recommend approval to the council. All those in favor of the motion, Randy, you have a hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to know what the impact would be. If we were to approve this, does the developer still get to argue his case to the council for the entire development, or the totality of the townhomes having the flexibility for rental occupancy?
We'd have to do a separate public hearing for that, and that's not before the plan commission and therefore not going before council. So we'd have to restart the clock, Abby, right?
Yeah, we would need a
So-
new public hearing notice, and it would
Yeah,
come to the plan commission.
Yeah,
for a
I'm
recommendation.
fine, as I can speak for Terrence. I mean, Terrence won't be thrilled about this because he wanted flexibility on all of it, but I've got a bank that I have to call tomorrow morning, so I need, yeah, let's do T1, and if Terrence or T-Wall, whatever, wants to proceed with changes to phases 2 and 3, then we can come back before plan commission and council and do that appropriately. But right now, I'm just looking for the first phase.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yeah, I guess with it, it's just looking at the first phase, I'm okay with approving this and not for the whole thing. Will this information be conveyed to the council that this is a sort of a conditional approval on just those 5?
Yes.
All right, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
Because as Taylor pointed out, those are the only 5 addresses listed in the public hearing notice.
Okay.
Which is
So-
strange because we don't normally list individual addresses in GIP amendments. But since
Right.
an address has been assigned,
I just
Right,
want to
yeah.
make sure that's clear that if this gets approved, it's approved because it's only those 5 and not because they forgot to put the other addresses in, and we think it's a good idea.
and
And I
that's why I hope my motion was clear, Abby, that I said for phase 1.
Okay, so
Yes.
everybody, so this is only for phase 1. We will still are asking them they should try to sell them, but give the option to rent. Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Gretchen,
Okay, so the motion passes 5-2. Okay, we are on to item number 6. This is the special implementation plan for the Bruce Company office, garden center and greenhouses, 2830 Parmenter Street. Abby, you want to take it?
I don't really have anything to add beyond the staff report. Our recommendation is for approval of the SIP to the Common Council contingent on. And then there's a long list of items, and those are primarily carryovers from the GIP approval because several of those contingencies haven't been satisfied yet. So I'm not going to read all of those off. It looks like a long list, but it's mostly because they're carry forwards from the GIP.
Okay, Commissioner Paulson?
Yeah, just a process question. We saw a concept version of this SIP, right? A few
Yes,
weeks ago?
that's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And
And
there
it
were
hasn't,
very favorable comments
yes,
on.
and it hasn't changed since then, right?
I don't think that there are any.
I see Joe Lee here. Joe, has this
Joe?
changed since the concept approval?
No, we've just refined the design.
Then we had all our questions answered then, so thank
So we are only talking about the phase 1A. Right, Abby?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're only talking about the phase 1A. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, I need a motion then.
Schaefer make a motion to approve with those
With the-
conditions as stated, yeah. The way
Okay.
Abby put it so well, that's what I want to.
Okay, need a second.
Ferdman Hermans.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Now, I think I mentioned last time, I like those colors, and I think Bruce Company folks are saying they are in dire need of an updated office and garden center. And the current building is not functional, out of date. It looks nice, but I guess what I see here is a lot better. So I think this will be a great improvement. I'm in favor of it. I'm going to vote for it. Any other questions or comments? Please raise your hand. Otherwise, the motion is to approve with all these various, the motion is for rezoning from, oh no.
SIP.
For the
SIP.
SIP for Bruce Company Office Garden Center and greenhouses 2830 Parmenter Street. I know we had the question of the driveway, but I think we talked about it last time. We are going to bring it up again. So that will be
That's
some.
still a contingency too, because we have not completed the traffic study yet.
Okay. Okay. So that's still contingency. Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay. Motion passes. We are on to item number 6. Item number 7, actually.
7,
So
yeah.
it's the specific implementation plan modification for design review changes to Greenway Station 1650 Deming Way. Abby or Daphne?
Daphne. Yeah, so this is just Greenway Station. They are trying to update some of their exterior. So there are several different components to this update. So like DSW and Five Below are doing some, architectural changes. And then they're just kind of repainting all of the exterior of the lifestyle center, as they like to say, to instead of like a pale yellow to more of a white and black kind of feel, to just kind of modernize it and then hopefully attract more customers. We're recommending approval. We recommend finding another place for the murals that they're going to be painting over. The current murals are kind of just behind a lot of the buildings. No one really interacts with them. So we recommend, finding a place where they can put a mural where people can actually, take pictures with it or interact with it. And then also approval of these design review changes contingent on the, I think, elevated walkway that our engineers just needed a little bit more clarification on.
Thank you, Daphne. Any questions for Daphne or any question at all? Seem like a fairly straightforward. They want to freshen it up so that they can be able to rent it more easily. And one of the stores is moving from where it is now to the corner. Okay, if there are no questions or comments, need a motion to approve.
Well, I guess a question, since staff recommendation said replacing the mural, is that a condition of the approval or just a recommendation?
I think it's just a recommendation. They would have to, they still have to, find a location for it. You just kind of threw it on them to find something like that. So, yeah.
And then when they do that, would come back to us as design review because it's a commercial building.
Yeah.
Then I'll make the motion to recommend approval of the SIP modification.
For the design review changes.
For design
Okay.
review changes, yeah.
Need a second?
Bruce seconds.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Paulson, second by Commissioner Bruce. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the SIP modification for design review changes for Greenway Station 1650 Deming Way, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. We are on to the next item, which is the concept review for Greenway Center Development, lots 3 and 4, Pleasantview Road. Okay, who's gonna take it? Abby or developer? Or?
Just give a brief overview to bring you up to speed. Mark Opitz wrote the staff comments, but he's not here currently.
Okay.
This is a new proposal for concept review for the property that we used to refer to it as the Strobel property. And this proposal is from LZ Ventures, requesting concept review for 3 8-story buildings, a total of about 375 units of multifamily rental housing, presumably market rate. Just one second here.
Yeah, what's in the back?
Somebody,
I think we previously had reviewed a proposal for a 14-story building at this site, and at the time there were a few pretty major concerns that led to the Common Council rejecting the application for rezoning. One of them being that in that proposal, the applicant did not have access to sanitary sewer. There is water access on the southwest corner of the site, but there was not sanitary sewer. And at the time, the developer was proposing to connect sanitary sewer through the Pheasant Branch Conservancy, and Conservancy Lands Commission had some concerns with that proposal. Under this new concept, the developer would be waiting for the Pleasantview Road reconstruction project to bring sanitary sewer from Highway 14 south along Pleasantview Road. So that in our minds is a plus. The second concern at the time was with regard to the view shed, specifically from the Pleasantview Golf Course view. When you look from the clubhouse to the east, the 14-story building stuck up above the tree line, and it had a negative impact to the view, and the Pleasantview Golf Course Committee was really concerned with the view. In this case, that is being somewhat mitigated, and so we think that this is more favorable. We still are recommending a referral to the Golf Course Committee. And then the third primary concern that the Common Council had was how this could impact PPD to the north, because in order to get 2 levels of underground parking, the developer was proposing to blast the rock out of the site, and that is still present in the current proposal. There might be an opportunity to mitigate some of those concerns if they're able to work out a time schedule with PPD for when that would take place so that it is not disruptive to PPD's operations. It's absolutely critical that we can't disrupt their operations during the daytime hours, because they have sensitive equipment that may need to be recalibrated. It could actually affect experiments that they have going on at their facility, and it could cost them substantial amounts of money if their experiments are impacted during the day. The city, for the Pleasantview Road reconstruction project, we are taking down that hill, which is right west of this site. And we have worked out a time schedule with the PPD leadership to make sure that we're not impacting their operations. So there might be a possibility for that. There were some other issues we wanted to ask for feedback on. One is provision of public parkland. That is something that Mayor Brar, I know, has been really actively trying to pursue for the Southwest quadrant, because we do not have adequate public parkland available south of Highway 14 and west of the Beltline. we want to make sure that we have good connectivity with the shared use path nearby, which will actually, there will be a pedestrian bridge constructed across Pleasantview at this location with the road project. And also the use of bird-friendly glass because of the amount of glass on the building that's being proposed and adjacency to the Conservancy lands. Our recommendation is feedback to the applicant, and we would like for a recommendation to forward the concept to the council, water resources, and the golf committee. And that's all.
Okay, any questions now?
Is the
Commissioner
applicant
Fox?
going to make a presentation?
We would like to if possible.
Okay, well, that's good. So let's, Abby, is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go for it.
Going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep, we can.
John Lee J with LZ is on as well, and he was going to kick us off.
Hi, everybody.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, John. Yes.
Oh, perfect. My name is John Lee J. I'm one of the principals with LZ Ventures. We are a owner, operator, and developer. All of our projects are primarily in the Dane County area. We did a project a handful of years ago called the Foundry, which was sort of a pioneer idea of putting some more residents next to Greenway Station, which has been very successful for us. We enjoyed the experience in Middleton extensively. The project's doing very, very well. And when the opportunity came to take a second look at this property, we jumped on it. It's literally a 2-minute walk up the bike path from where Foundry is. So what led us to being before you tonight was how great of an experience doing the Foundry was in Middleton, and the fact that we all know that Dane County does not have enough housing units in it. When we looked at this property, obviously it's not zoned for housing, and it's hard to understand, but we think it's an infill site. It's kind of a leftover piece from the office park and from the retail center. Very much like the Foundry was a leftover piece that between Aline and Mike and John and several other people in Middleton, we thought it was a great idea to put some people closer to PPD, one of the biggest employers, if not the biggest employer, and the retail center. We think that redeveloping this site into housing is a tremendous opportunity. What we're looking for tonight from everybody is some feedback on what our concept is. We never come in with something that we wouldn't want to build. We don't come in with something to say, okay, we'll throw it on the table and see what happens with it. We've done a bunch of research on the site. The site's complicated with the rock and with PPD and with Pleasantview being there and the history of the site, which is kind of right up our alley. We kind of like tough sites. So what we presented tonight was what we think is a really good fit for that site. And what we're hoping for from this group is some direction so that we can roll up our sleeves, go to work, and figure out exactly what makes sense on Pleasantview, if even a housing project that on this site in Pleasantview does make sense in your eyes.
Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, go ahead, Dwayne.
So I'm Dwayne Johnson with Kanothi and Bruce Architects, and as Abby summarized, we're talking about the site located here in yellow across from the Pleasantview Golf Course. Here is our colored site plan. The property is just under 6 acres, and it's currently an undeveloped site with a mix of different vegetation across the site. Site is unique and it's at an exciting location, but it does come with some unique challenges as well. The site is very steep and includes the presence of bedrock. Pleasantview Road is also being reconstructed, which will expand the utilities, as Abby mentioned, but also introduce timing and logistical considerations, along with the reduction to the right of way along the western portion of the property. We do anticipate that the project would be rezoned to a planned development district. Our proposed site plan shown here would implement 3 8-story buildings, each with approximately 125 dwelling units. We would also incorporate a community area within this area, which would include a pool and a number of different plazas. And we would also include different amenities located different areas along the site as well. We're working to find ways to interconnect the site amenities as well as the adjacent recreation areas so that it's more of a resort type feel. Each building would also have underground parking on 2 levels. We're using the site's contours to gain access to these parking levels. There would also be a balanced supply of surface parking for guests and tenants. Our total parking would be 476 stalls, which would support the 376 dwelling units. The future Pleasantview Road plan is also shown here. There's currently planned within the Pleasantview Road reconstruction an entrance within the northern section, which we would plan to keep that same entrance and continue out to the 3 different buildings. Here's our first look at exterior buildings that we wanted to share the concepts. The general design inspiration for the architecture is a modern mountain style resort. This design theme will be carried throughout the site and the building design. We would be using high quality materials, which would include a stone base, fiber cement and metal panels, and wood accents. Large windows will be used throughout, which will add to the exterior architecture and also provide stunning views for the future residents. This is a view looking north with the new Pleasantview Road grades that Abby mentioned, as well as the bike connection that would go over Pleasantview Road. We also included some different long views. This one is taken from the golf course. This is down the hill on the corner of Market and Aspen Commons with the Foundry building to the left here. And there's our building poking above the vegetation. And then this last view is down on Greenway Boulevard, just down the hill in front of the Raven Software building. And there we are. That's really all that we had. Like John had mentioned, we really are looking for your questions and input on the project. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I had just 2 questions. I think they've both been answered. It was my impression when we saw this a few years ago that there was not a plan to put sewers up the main, but I presume that's been changed. Right, Abby?
Yes, the previous proposal was to kind of jump ahead of the Pleasantview Road reconstruction project. And so we weren't going to have any sewer access. But under this proposal, they're willing to wait. And the Pleasantview Road project is actually starting later this summer.
Okay. That was the one. The other was just the elevations of having a driveway enter into the road and having a bridge, what looks a little distance away. I was wondering how that was going to work, but you showed the drawing, which showed the 3-dimensional with the bridge started going up and around. My other big concern, of course, is this whole area of the city has 0 playgrounds. It's got one coming in that's tiny, but you're adding almost 400 residences, which means there's potential for many, many, many kids and the need for some park space. And you have a pool and other things, but I'm just wondering if you could address what thoughts you have about perhaps adding some extra space or doing something to accommodate some kind of equivalent of a park for kids who are in this area or living in there, because that's a lot of kids and there's nowhere for them to go.
Go ahead.
It's a question to Dwayne.
We're just getting into the site design. I guess we wanted to get input on the density and kind of what our general ideas were. We do plan on doing a lot of amenities within the site, and we can definitely look at more playground type or, different types of amenities. We think there's a huge advantage also to the future skywalk and kind of the recreation connection to the bike paths, and the mountain biking and the skiing and everything over at the Pleasantview golf course as well. But we'll definitely keep that in mind. And I don't know if John has more to add on that, but we're definitely going to dive into the designs of the site and what those amenities exactly are.
Well, that's good. I chair the Parks Recreation Forestry Commission and would certainly be interested in having conversations about what go forward. But that's a big hot button for the committee and for the city is the lack of any dedicated park spaces or amenities in this part of the town. And like I say, you're adding a huge number of houses. So
Right.
I
And
really hope you'll continue to look for this stuff.
sure.
John, Lisa, you want to add anything? Okay, so.
Oh, you're muted.
John, you muted.
Yeah, you're right. I am. I try to cut myself off because I like to talk too much. So you have to excuse me. We think it's extremely important to create a wonderful environment for our tenants and to be an asset to the community. So we will not go through this process without understanding the needs of the potential residents, the future residents, and Middleton as a whole, what needs to be done here. When you look at the number of units, the parks fees for it, the opportunity for green and blue roof space for us and entertainment space for our tenants, as well as community tenants with the adjacency of the walking path. Well, I mean, one of the things that drove us immediately to this site is it's a 2.5-minute walk from Foundry. We have struggled to acquire the site next to Foundry and finish what I think is the proper development for Greenway. I think having another site with the amount of green space that we're able to provide there with green roofs, green terrace, potential recreational areas on that site for not only tenants of Foundry, but people on this side of town is something that we want to explore deeply.
Well, good. I appreciate your response, and we'll look for what you come up with and hold your feet to the fire, so to speak.
Well, and it won't be without asking for help. So
Okay.
Yeah, so I agree with Commissioner Schaefer. So this is the south, this is the, the northwest part of the quadrant of the city. It has, as of now, it has no park, no playground, nothing. So I have worked on this very hard. So finally there is something happening close to Foundry. So, but this is 376 units. It's like a small village. So you definitely, you could say that, well, most of it will be, the older folks. But the thing is that they still have grandchildren. So they come and visit them. So not to have a playground, not to have some place where the kids can spend some time, it is where they develop the relationship. That's where the community is built. And this part of the city has been lacking it. And we can't really have such a huge development, 376, and not have something. And I'm really glad that you're thinking about it and you will do something about it, because that is very, very important for the community per se and for the city. So this part of the city has been completely lacking in any park space, period. Commissioner Paulson.
Yeah, could either Daphne or Dwayne, could you pull back up kind of the concept site plan, just so we can talk through it? Down a few pages. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I guess to Dwayne and John, how familiar are you with the previous incarnation under Strobel and the various discussions that were had at the city
To be honest with you, I've been just ignorant enough to not have it poison me against this site. If that makes any sense.
And so I'm trying to remember what we finally recommended approval that didn't get through council because of this, well, a number of issues. Abby, was it 12 stories or 11?
I think it was I think you approved a 12-story building kind of slashed across the center of the site.
With how many units?
200 and something, 220, 215, 230. I don't remember.
One of the things I like about your design is it's not just one big building. And I know they did that for kind of an economy of scale. And that's why, given the just costs of the bedrock, they felt they needed to go up to 12 or 14 stories. How far underground are you going for these 8-unit buildings? And do you face the same kind of, I guess the question is, if you have to drill through the bedrock or blast through the bedrock, do you have to go deeper for a taller building? Is that
I think the bedrock supports the buildings. One of the things that kind of led us to this equation is on all 3 buildings, the downslope side of the buildings, we would have had to build retaining walls anyway if we just went single-story parking, and we would have had a bunch of expense to do that. So we kind of struck a balance with how much bedrock we had to remove, how much the site falls away in all directions to get to what we've presented tonight. The key to it is, again, it's a very expensive site to deal with. You've been through it before. The dealing with the stormwater on this limestone is going to be expensive. Dealing with the blasting and make sure that PPD is comfortable with this, and that Pleasantview goes into construction the way it's supposed to, is a big deal. So when we sat down and started kind of moving the Rubik's Cube around, one of the things I never talked about is our original background. My business partner and I used to own and run a big construction company. So we have a lot of baseline experience. So we sort of look at these sites that are difficult as a challenge, and the balance we struck and what we presented to you, although there's a lot of density here, I think it's very neat, is dealing with the limestone and the drop off of all the sides and the wasted amount of retaining that would have had to be there to create these buildings in a smaller scale that wouldn't have been affordable. That's a long-winded explanation. Hopefully,
because that is where I was going, because I don't think the concern was as much the density as it was the height.
Yeah.
And again, the Strobel plan really tried to get that economy of scale because of the cost in one super tall building. So the question is, as we look at this, what would it do to the economics of this site if building number 1 and number 3 remained, and maybe were larger and could have a few more units, while still keeping that 8-story footprint, but building 2 went away and that southwest corner became a playground, in essence, or a park on this site? I don't even know if that's feasible, but I guess the question some people are going to ask is, do you need all 8 stories, or could you do 3 5-story buildings? And we know a little bit of construction economics, right? That you need a different podium if you're going to go up to 8 stories. So you don't do a 6 or 7-story building because just the extra cost you need to cover it with more units.
Right. It's either the Foundry, which is a great building. It's a 5-story podium building over 1 level of underground parking with 4 stories of wood frame on top of it, or it's this.
Yep.
And in between is death.
Yes.
You can't support parking, so you'd have to you could only build as many units here as single level of parking would support. And then my question is, and believe me, we beat our head against the wall, is what's the right number of units here? We understand, I mean, we're in this business, we understand the deficit of units in Dane County. And And so we really fought doing the simpler one. You know,
mean the 5-story?
two elongated podium buildings at a couple of hundred units. I think would be underdeveloping the site. I think it would be shorting us, and I think it would be shorting Middleton. But that's just the opinion I came to when my partner and I were developing the concept before you, and we want your feedback. We're not always right. I just think that if these units don't go here, where do they go?
Right. Well, and just to, you know, many of us on this commission were there for the many hours of the previous incarnation on this site. And you also, it's not just the PPD issue, it's the condo buildings just to the south and east. I forget the name, Crown something or
Bella Casa.
Bella Casa. And then it was the aesthetics off of the road relative to the golf course, a city gem.
Yeah.
And so what I don't know is how people would react to the 8-story building. And I appreciate that your architect already gave us the kind of view shed, which we had to, you know, get at a second iteration on the Strobel property. So 8 stories doesn't bother me here, given the sloping of the site. But I don't know how easy that's going to be to get other consensus. So I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Commissioner Paulson. So I will ask a few questions before I give it to Gretchen. So you already know the Pleasantview Road we will be start building in May, and it's going to be dug out about, Abby will know more, 15 feet deep. So I don't know how does that impact this site, and I'm sure that you have looked at it. So that's
Right.
one. Yeah, go ahead, Dwayne.
So we have the plans. Abby shared the plans for Pleasantview Road. So our current concept, and actually those renderings that we showed as well, show the new height of Pleasantview Road. And with the connection to the north, we're using that grade to enter our site and then kind of going up a little bit from there to get to where our current grades are. So we're starting to take that into account.
Okay, that's great. Now the other, as Abby mentioned too, we will have to have discussion with PPD. And as Kurt Paulson said too, Bella Casa, and above all, golf course. This is our, we have won the gold award from Edison magazine for 3 years, and this year it was silver. So it is a very important for the city. So getting their input as quickly and as early as possible would be really good. Probably Abby would be arranging some of those neighborhood meetings. But PPD is the largest employer in Middleton. So right now they have 2,200 people working there. Of course, they're owned by Thermo Fisher. So those things would be important to, get input from. So the next one is Commissioner Gretchen and then Commissioner Slavish.
I just have a number of thoughts since you're looking for feedback. I would guess that PPD can be worked out since the gravel quarry across the way lasts, and you can feel that all the way into Blackhawk neighborhood. So they must have something worked out with PPD. I would assume it would be feasible. So when I lived in Vancouver, British Columbia, we had a cap on the height of the buildings downtown to preserve the view of the mountains, because everybody considered that to be a treasure that everyone should be able to see from everywhere, including anywhere downtown. And I feel that that's how people feel about our lakes. And it's one of the things people like about golfing at our Middleton golf course versus many of the other Madison or University golf courses that are available. So I would be just concerned if we're blocking some of the view from the golf course, that's going to be some pushback that you're going to hear. So the skyline, the access to traffic. So that would be for deliveries, moving vans, but also just the traffic in and out, because Pheasant Pleasantview Road is such a corridor for commuters through that whole business park and connecting all of the neighborhoods. Obviously, it's getting redesigned, but one access point seems like it might add more to the problem than what we're trying to solve with the reconstruction. I'd also be concerned about runoff there. You're taking the cap off of a high point. And whenever you see like strip mining in the Appalachians, that always ends up being a really big problem downstream. For perspective, I have coursework in economic geology, which AKA that means mining, and also hydrogeology. So that's how the groundwater moves. So that comes from experience of learning about that. And then the last comment would be, it would be really interesting to see this redesigned with sort of a courtyard in the center instead of so much surface parking right in the middle. And that might give that sort of community feel as well as a playground feel. I don't know if there'd be some way to manage additional surface parking sort of around the back, or just sort of redesign the site in the way that had more of a courtyard, but that might be one thing to consider. Thoughts to share. I'm done.
Thank you, Gretchen. Mike Slavish.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So John, Dwayne, first of all, I think the design looks great. Given the topography on this site, kind of moving towards some kind of mountain design, although we don't have mountains here in Middleton, certainly the topography or a design that is appreciative of the topography that exists on this site, I think is a great way to go. I do too, like Kurt, I think support the 8 stories. It's clearly a big improvement over the other design concept, which I supported before as well. I thought the height was appropriate there. Therefore, I think 8 stories here would probably be appropriate. I do, for those of us who were here in that last discussion, though, there was a lot of talk about the impact of any kind of pilings that would go in here. And, these 3 footprints collectively are quite a bit larger than what even was proposed before. So arguably that's going to be more of that, which I know, politically was a real concern with council and PPD, immediately to the north. So thinking through that and dovetailing off of Kurt's comments about, is there a way to scale that back a bit, at the same time provide some parkland here. I know developers don't necessarily want to give up developable land, but that is a need that John has expressed many, many times, for this part of town. So keeping all that in mind, as you continue to contemplate, how this thing moves forward. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Slavish. Next one is Commissioner Paulson.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to the question of Pleasantview Road, because the images that Daphne, if you can go back up 1 or 2 images. Actually, I guess it's down in the packet.
So we had redone.
Okay, that was
Yeah.
different than what you presented, Dwayne.
Yeah, we redid that to get the grades correct on Pleasantview. This shows the old grades. What I showed.
Can you show us your
Pleasantview?
Sorry, that's where I got confused, because I remember
Yeah,
your presentation had a different grade.
Right, sorry
Yeah.
about that. And I can share these with Abby to get them on file, but.
Okay.
So here are the new grades that go, it's quite the cut into the peak of the hill, which gives enough area to get the bridge across. So now actually our site's gaining a little bit of elevation to get up, to where the grades currently are within our site, and Pleasantview is being cut down quite a bit.
So somebody who enters your site would then be able to, at that driveway, enter in and go directly underneath the building in the parking, which looks like it's 1 layer at the
Right.
street level, but slopes down to 2 layers.
Yeah, I didn't do a good job explaining that, but each of the buildings are on 2 flat plates. So this guy, the first building here, you'd go down a few feet and be at the lowest parking where the white car is coming from. And then as you go up here, you get up far enough to get to the next level above. So we're using the grades on each of the buildings to be able to do that, to connect on 2 locations and have pretty much a straight entrance into different levels of garage.
What this view does do was what I was really ham-handedly trying to explain earlier, is because of the crown of the hill, it allows with minimal disruption, and I use the word minimal lightly, the 2 separate flat plates of parking, whereas where the white car is down in the corner, if this was only 1 level of underground parking and there were 2 or 3 floors less of the building, there would be a giant retaining wall serving no purpose other than holding up the hill that we didn't excavate, which kind of led us to this being the spin for the site, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit there in terms of
Sorry.
audio quality, but if I heard you correctly, a one level of parking with like a 5-story building, you wouldn't excavate as much, and so you'd have to have a retaining wall anyway.
Right. The wall on the wall on the left side of the project would essentially look a lot like that, except there wouldn't be the benefit of the 2nd level of parking nor the units that it supports above it.
And would that have to be true on the other building, which I think on the master plan is labeled building number 2, the one to the?
Yeah, they all kind of, because
They all drop off the side of the hill.
Right, right.
Which again led us to kind of forced us to this design. It didn't force us, but it kind of opened itself up to this design for us.
Because building number 1 and building number 2 are the ones that are going to be most visible from the golf course, right?
Yep.
I don't know if you can go back to the image from the golf course. I could barely make out building number 3.
Yeah, I guess it's, really in the middle here.
Yeah.
So because of how it's located, it kind of spans between the two other buildings.
Yeah. If I was going to play the role of the developer, if we took 2 floors off of each of building 1 and 2 and left building 3 the way it was, it would still block the view the same way those do.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, we'll refer to the golf course committee, but I can pretty much predict what they're going to say when they see this. They want zero obstruction.
I have a very strong attachment to the clubhouse since back when I used to be a contractor. I built it.
Yeah, they're going to want zero obstruction of the lake view from this spot.
Yep. Understood.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments? So now, Abby, the city path will be grandfathered, or we will have a easement for that one, or because part of it is on their property, right?
Yeah, I think that it clips the corner of their property. So hopefully through any approval process, that if this project proceeds, that they would be willing to dedicate the public access easement for that corner piece.
Okay. Okay, any further questions or comments? I guess the question will be
to the PPD issue. Would you be blasting, or would you just be able to drill the pilings?
I believe we'll be blasting. There won't be any pilings. I believe we're going to have to cut the rock, and our intention would be, and the reason we're before you right now and trying to rush to a conclusion, is to try to do it in concert with Pleasantview. And as I've said before, we're very good stewards. We love to work with people. That's our history. PPD's been operating for a long time very successfully across from an open pit mine that regularly blasts. And Pleasantview is going to make the cut that's going to happen at Pleasantview. They're going to do a lot of seismic work, and we will coordinate with unbelievable diligence with PPD. And if we can't gain their support, obviously we probably don't have a project. So we understand the hill we have to climb there, and I'm not concerned about it. I don't think anything we're going to do there is going to be disruptive to them. I really don't. after reading all the reports work, I think the previous developer took a less than tactful approach to solving this problem. And I think that if we can put a project together in concurrence with the redevelopment of Pleasantview, I think we can strike a very happy neighborly relationship because we're going to be on either side of PPD for the rest of our lives. I think that we'll all work well together. I don't know that for sure because until we have some indication of what the project looks like, we have not. Our operation is to go to the city first and then start, once we have some indication whether you even want a residential development here or not, then we'll start working with the neighbors and we will work very, very hard with them to come to a reasonable conclusion that benefits Middleton, the neighbor's property and our property.
Yeah, so John, we have had meetings with PPD. They're very cooperative. So I think we talked about the road and we had some other meeting too before. So, and with respect to the query, they are really all coordinated the timing when they do. So they all know it. So it is possible to, I mean, you know, they know it. So it's possible to work with them. So
I agree.
Okay, so other than the height, you know, I guess everything else looks with the building of the Pleasantview Road, the water, sewer, storm, that will be all handled along Pleasantview Road. So we won't have the issues with the Conservancy Land Commission. So that's a good part. So I know, you know, the original plan was 7 long time ago, then they moved up to 14. And anyway, so I wasn't supportive of 14. So yeah, so that's where it's at. But my focus is really, you know, that if you're going to have 376 units, you need some community center, some playground, and some of those things. So any other input from anyone else? Otherwise, Abby, what do we need from us here now? Reference, sending it to council, sending it to golf course, sending it to Water Sources Management Commission, and what else?
That was Mark's recommendation when he reviewed it. Just those 3.
If I remember, Conservancy Lands had some issue with the previous proposal, but I'm forgetting what it was.
Well, the issue was, because I was on it at that time, was they were gonna run this giant sewer pipes down the side.
Oh, okay.
It had all.
But that's no longer an issue because the
That's right.
parcel to the east is owned by the city and it's considered conservancy lands or parkland.
Conservancy.
Yeah.
Well, since it's in the neighborhood, does it? They meet once a month. So is it really? Probably it's a good idea just to let them I provide any report, at least to assure them that nothing is happening there, right?
Right. Yeah, because there were some issues with the height of the building too, you know, shading trees and whatever in the conservancy, but it was primarily putting the pipe down and what it would do and dig out the whole hillside. And that was,
yeah,
that's not an issue now.
So in terms of timing, Abby, so would it add some more time to add them to the list or what? How would it affect positively or negatively?
I don't think it would affect the timing because they can continue to, you know, work on modifications and a submittal for an eventual rezoning. I don't think it would change anything.
Would it help the project?
I personally don't think you need to refer it to CLC just because they're no longer proposing that connection. But I'll defer to the Plan Commission.
Okay.
No, that makes sense. We don't need to.
Okay.
I mean, if any committee wants to take up an action, they can put it on their agenda independent of us anyway.
Okay. Okay.
But we still don't have a rezoning request to do a public hearing notice subject to a class 2 notice. So it's going to be weeks before anything appears on our agenda anyway.
Okay.
And we can mention it at our staff meeting tomorrow so that all the staff, including CLC's staff, is aware of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So do you need a motion now or what?
Just to be clear, we're forwarding to council for kind of concept review. but without a specific recommendation. Okay.
Okay, so is somebody ready to make a motion then?
Well,
Well-
the staff
Is-
comment
is there a
said
motion?
staff recommends forwarding to council with a recommendation. So it sounds like we are generally supportive of the concept.
Is that what
That-
you want, Abby?
Yeah, I was just rereading that. I think the reason that Mark was asking for it to go to council just at a concept stage is because of the previous proposals and the action that was taken. And I think Mark was thinking it might be helpful to the developer to know whether there's general support for the density, the height, and kind of the basics of the proposal before proceeding with a rezoning request.
Yeah, my feeling is they've gotten that information from us at this point and anybody else, but and if you're not listening to what we're saying tonight, it'll come back to haunt you later, so.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable making a recommendation, but I think we've given good feedback that should be helpful.
Yeah.
You'll
Yeah, I
hear
don't-
these kinds of comments later from us.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you want, Abby? So send it to the council and the various committees, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could be convinced that it might be a bit premature to send it to council at this point. And maybe it should just go to Water Resources and Pleasantview Golf Committee and then, kind of go through more of the normal process. I'm afraid
Okay.
that,
Could
now
you,
that I'm thinking it through, I'm afraid that council won't really know what to do with the concept review.
Yeah.
yeah, we've
yeah,
never done a concept review at council before. That's kind
yes.
of why they have the plan commission. They want us to do that.
Yes, okay, so is somebody ready to make a motion to send it to various committees?
I'll make that motion, Schaefer.
Okay, need a second?
I'll second. Olson.
Oh. Okay, so the motion by Commissioner Schaefer, second by Commissioner Paulson, it is sending to this is referred to Water Source Management Commission and the Pleasantview Golf Course Committee. Right, Abby?
Right.
Okay, so we are not.
And can we just ask staff, would you just send an email to council saying, hey, this came up. You may want to take a few minutes just to look at the proposal as it starts working its way through the committees. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's a good idea. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, John and Dwayne, we got the ball rolling, so let's see
Thank
where
you.
it goes. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much
It's a
for your
big hill to
input. It's
climb.
greatly
thank you.
appreciated.
All right, we are on to item number 8, item number 9. This is the Bell Fontaine alignment. This is the cross section coming from public work PWC. Abby, or who is going to take it?
Yep, Mark wrote the staff comments on this one as well. The Public Works Committee has now endorsed an alignment for Bellefontaine and a cross section. And we're asking for the Plan Commission to support the Public Works Committee's recommendation, which includes 11-foot travel lanes, and a recommendation that the shared use path extends the full length of Bellefontaine Boulevard and that there be a robust connection with the Misty Valley Path.
Okay, any questions or comments now? Okay, Commissioner Paulson. And then Commissioner.
Can someone from Public Works or someone who was there, what's the why 11-foot travel lane rather than a 10-foot travel lane to try to kind of keep a narrower residential feel with a 10-foot travel lane?
I can see you've never driven a school bus.
Okay,
I'm
so
gonna quickly try to pull up the minutes from that meeting. They talked about it on 2/14.
Abby, it's in the packet as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, I went through this, but a lot of it is those various 450, 350, that's all sort of Greek to me. I couldn't really understand that. So you probably need some planning background, or if you could explain it, all those numbers, what do they really mean? So they say 100, there are some of the, well, it's not here, but if you read in some other details, so this is pretty simple. Oh, what is that 450 radius? And there were some other radii proposed as well.
Yeah, I think our public works director is being really specific in the minutes. Our public works staff was not supportive of the linear alignment of the road, which I know that the Plan Commission previously had supported. And I think that what the staff member was trying to do was to document the radius of those curves, even though the Public Works Committee decided to go ahead and support them over the recommendation of the staff.
Okay. All right. So who's going to, Commissioner Paulson and then Commissioner Gritchen. So go ahead, please.
Well, I'm trying to remember what the issues were. Because there's some slope and there was some concern about safety with the road gets icy and getting snowplows through there. And at some level, we have to trust the Public Works Committee. But it was definitely our understanding and talking to the developer that you want a cross section and a field that is a gentle neighborhood traffic calming sort of feel, not a kind of high capacity street for a lot of through traffic. And so what I just don't know yet is whether this meets those objectives, but I'll let others talk.
Commissioner Gretchen. And then Mike Slavish.
Guess I don't have any follow-up on the radius, but I was wondering if this purple dashed line is that bike trail to Misty Valley. Is that what's referred to? The robust connection to Misty Valley, is that purple dashed line? I don't see a key on this.
Abby?
Sorry, I was on a different screen. I was trying to look up the Public Works Committee. So the purple dashed line is the connection along Bellefontaine Boulevard. So what we learned from the MPO traffic study is that we don't need a 4-lane road. And so we have additional right-of-way through Misty Valley, and we can continue that what could be a regional bike path facility along Bellefontaine. I think that what Mark noted in the staff comment about the robust connection, I think that what he was talking about was actually the path that's shown in green. Yeah.
Okay.
I think he would like to see some improvements in that. He was concerned that it was kind of shoehorned in and it was an afterthought. I believe he's spoken with the developer about that.
Does it cut across and through a road? Past these first houses? This first 4? I don't see a name of a street there.
Yeah, it looks like there is a crossing. There is a road crossing there.
That does look odd. I don't really know what else to say about that. It's not really clear what's happening there for me.
Abby, is that green? Is that an easement, not the bike path?
That looks like a utility easement there, not a bike path.
Actually, I
Yeah.
think that I wonder if the tan is the path that he's referring to, because I know that they were trying to create a boardwalk in that area. And I wonder if the tan is the path. I apologize. I'm trying to jump in here for Mark and I did not take a look at this before the meeting, so.
Yeah, Abby, you're right. I believe this tan, like small tan line here is a boardwalk that they were proposing. And I know the developer was very like set on this boardwalk idea, and then this purple dash, pink dash line is like a shared use path that I'm not sure if that is there or if that was what Mark was saying he prefers.
I think we need more details.
Yeah.
Just,
And a
let's
key
work
to the
out.
map,
Okay.
color-coded key.
Mike Slavish?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
just a quick comment. And Kurt, really kind of your question about 10-foot versus 11-foot. I mean, given the meandering nature of Bellefontaine, although it's, we don't want a ton of traffic along there. We want it to feel like a residential street. I'm sure Public Works is asking for a little wider road section, just given the nature of the curves, the back and forth curves that exist along Bellefontaine. And, to John's point, if you're driving a bus down there, having that little bit extra space, I think would be appropriate.
Okay.
So clearly, I support that as a former Public Works director.
Commissioner Schaefer. Mike, you're done?
Yes, I'm done, Mayor.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Mike,
I agree with Mark. And
John
of course,
Schaefer.
I do drive a school bus and it's almost 60 feet long. And what you find, I also noticed in the letter, they're talking about enlarging the radius of these curves, which is another part. I think they're just trying to soften every bit of this thing. And I support it completely because you go around a tight curve and there's cars parked on either side. You can't count on cars parking right next to the curb. They stick out in the middle, they open their doors. And I think that this is just for safety's sake is a good thing.
Okay. Abby, is that enough guidance to the staff? I guess if there was a little bit more labeling, a little bit more to understand here, we could provide more input, but I spent some time on this one, really couldn't make an head and tail out of it. So I don't know. So
We have time, so I don't see any issue with just deferring this. And
Okay.
when we bring it back on the 22nd, we'll have more details.
okay, so Gretchen, unless you have some really burning input, go ahead. But otherwise,
One last comment on the bike
Okay.
path. So I know that there's an idea to connect this around the north side and then up to Highway 12 bike path. And if these are sharp angles and this isn't clearly marked, when, it all looks very clear, perhaps, maybe not clear if you're looking at a map from above, but once you're on it, it's not clear. And so I would be more in support of a bike path that was obviously a bike path the entire way and didn't have sharp angles from a use perspective.
Okay, how about the others? I think we need something well marked, so which is easy to understand and know what we are really voting on or recommending. And I really have a hard time doing with this what we have here. Unless somebody else has a burning desire, Randy, to make some recommendation. Go ahead, Randy.
You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question for staff or comment. I saw one of the comments states to balance the terrace widths for tree root zones. Where the bike path is, the terrace gets pretty narrow. I think it says 5 feet, and then on the other side of the street, it's 10 feet. Was the idea that both terraces would get to be somewhere in between 5 to 10 feet, more equal in size?
It sounds like that's what they meant, but I don't know for sure, but we'll make sure that that's answered in the memo when we bring it back.
Okay, so So does everybody think it's okay to defer it to the next meeting when we have some more details, some clarifications?
Yes,
Okay, so John, you make that motion and I
I'll
second
make
it.
that, yeah, I'll make that motion. We defer.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to defer it, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Are we ready for to adjourn or you have some stories to tell?
Bruce will move to adjourn.
Levis will second.
Need a second.
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
we are.
Good
adjourned.
night.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Thank you, thank you.
Good night.
Bye,
Bye.
thank you.